All right, welcome to an extra video right here with a member of the Junction blog. He's the Hammer coming in to talk a little bit of Texas A&M, especially since the feud has developed between Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher, and Nick Saban. Kind of a three-way match going on right now. Although that's kind of a weird fight for Jimbo to pick, but we'll get to that at a later time. How you doing, Hank?
Doing well, Steven. Thanks for having me. Hope you're doing well too. Like I said, I've been keeping up with everything y'all got going on and enjoy all the shows.
Appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to do, especially shows like SEC After Dark that just goes immediately off the rails. I love doing that show. My wife actually came home today and said that was actually really funny. Of course, in the last show, I actually talked about how Patrick Willis stood up for her honor, her perceived honor. So she likes it when I tell that story.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So this is what happened for those who have been living under the rock for the last 72 hours. Lane Kiffin joked about Texas A&M needing to pay a luxury tax on their signing class. Jimbo Fisher fired off and did a little, I'm going to say he doth protest too much. But it's one of those situations to where you just like say, if you just didn't acknowledge it, you would probably be better off. But he did, and he did so extreme. And honestly, as an Ole Miss fan, this comes across as Hugh Freeze's tweet in 2013. That's the way this comes off. It's like, if you have any problems, email our compliance offices. Do not slander these young men or their families.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Jimbo clearly responded very emphatically and sent quite a message, I guess, that he is not he's not going to stand for people accusing him or his program of paying recruits. And I think I've been on your show. We did a show weekly during the year, so how I feel about Jimbo. I was obviously not super happy with how the season went, and I think he's got a lot of issues, especially offensively, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, many different times. Not today. Point being, although I'm a huge A&M fan, I'm certainly not someone who worships the ground that Jimbo walks on. But in this case, I'm definitely standing by him, just because I think. Now, look, again, I'm standing by him. I'm not saying that A&M is not using NIL to get recruits. I think that's clear. There's certainly something in the water right now in College Station, and I'm sure NIL has something to do with it. I think, the biggest issue that I had with just sort of the national narrative, I suppose, and why I was glad Jimbo addressed it was, number one, I think the $30 million figure that has basically become fact. There's just not a reality where that could be real. That amount of money. Again, NIL is playing a part, certainly, but in no world are people at A&M or any program going to spend $30 million on kids who have never played a down of college football. Over $1 million an average per recruit is just not feasible. And it's not feasible for a locker room either, because there's guys that just left A&M to go to the NFL draft who, if we had $30 million sitting around, probably could have made a lot more in 1 year at A&M than they'll make in several in the NFL. Assuming you're not a first-round pick, you're not going to be rolling in dough until that next contract hits. So I think that number clearly set Jimbo off as well, because he addressed it multiple times directly that $30 million was outlandish. Now, when he said NIL had nothing to do with the recruiting class, that's coach speak, right? But again, I think the $30 million figure is very outlandish. And I think, again, when you talk about the guys that are currently on the roster, well, A&M has recruited top 10 recruiting classes the last 3 years under Jimbo. Not nearly as prolific as this one, obviously. But if there was $1 million checks being handed out to these kids, again, that haven't played it down, that would not sit well with the current players either. Because, well, why in the world is this guy getting any money or getting more money, most likely, if he hadn't played at all. So I'm glad, honestly, like I said, I'm glad he addressed it, and I get the narrative. I get that people, are I guess upset about it and are, getting on Jimbo for how he addressed it, because he did go at it extremely emphatically. But like I said, I think there was a lot of rumor and exaggeration going on. Jimbo is someone who has recruited very well throughout his entire career. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he would have had a very, very good class, regardless of if NIL was introduced either. I think a big part in this also has to do with programs that A&M recruits against struggling at the moment, right? And A&M's not the only one who benefited from this either. I mean, you look at Georgia and Alabama's class, A&M has the highest whatever rating of all time, but Georgia and Alabama are right there with them, especially when you look at average player ratings. Now, in Alabama's case, they took some guys from the portal, Ole Miss as well, who are extremely talented, and likely took them in place of high school players, right? So A&M signed more players, therefore garnered more recruiting points, but on a player-for-player basis, they're really not that far ahead. Actually, I think Alabama technically is like higher rated. So point being, and to reference those programs that were down, A&M recruits heavily, obviously, against Texas, who just went 5-7. Now, they had a great class as well, top 5, but I certainly think if Texas had a better year, they probably could have even had a better class. They recruit hard against Oklahoma in the DFW and Houston area. Lincoln Riley left them high and dry. We know that story. LSU just hired Brian Kelly, who had 2 weeks to try and get a class together before signing day. A&M was able to pull some kids out of Florida. At Florida State, University of Florida, Miami, all those programs are down. So, again, I think NIL had a lot to do with it, but when you look around at how this class was made up and where these kids came from, you can kind of see where A&M got a foot in the door, right? They're able to do this because other programs are down in those areas, and that just added to it, right? Where there's certainly, just for example, next year, I don't expect this to be repeated, because if LSU's recruiting well, if Oklahoma's recruiting well, Florida, whoever, then it's not feasible. You're not going to be able to get this many guys, because 7 5-stars and however many else is just insane. So I know I just rambled a lot there. Please respond.
Yeah, real quick, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs, right through the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And not just football, BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops and NHL boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of the new amazing offers for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the other side of this, the way that this is all being perceived. And nobody has a problem with Texas A&M taking advantage of their advantage in NIL. Even if that $30 million number was real, people would not take advantage of it. Yes, they would complain about it, but they could see it. They could respect it. The problem is that 2 months ago, Jimbo was on national radio bragging about their NIL advantage, talking about how this is not a new thing. This is something we've always done. Just now we can do it out in the open. And that is where the myth of all this started. It wasn't from sliced bread and the Bro Bible. It was from that interview of Jimbo Fisher. He created this himself on Paul Feinbaum. And if they would just own it, and say, yeah, we have an advantage. I mean, it's oil money. It is what it is. Everybody would be like, well, that's just what it is. Because there's already an imbalance in college football, like you talked about with Alabama and Georgia. Texas A&M would just go on that log heap. The problem stems from the faux outrage that was exhibited yesterday. And I think this was a Ross Bjork thing because it looked a whole lot like the playbook that he went through when the NCAA was doing our 5-year colonoscopy after we recruited really well in 2013. It looked almost exactly like that. And that's probably where the outrage in the conference is coming from. Lane Kiffin fished and absolutely wanted Jimbo to go off so he could steal the signing day news cycle because we didn't sign anybody. It was just a marketing ploy. But the bait was absolutely taken. The reaction was stunning, man.
Yeah, again, that press conference shocked me. I saw his comments on whatever show, CBS Sports HQ or something, where he addressed it and then obviously went off in the press conference. I think like you mentioned the two comments I think that set him off, because like you said, he talked about there's NIL and it's always been going on. It just wasn't legal. And then Saban earlier in the day had some pretty emphatic comments about how they've never done it the wrong way. They've never done this and that. And then Kiffin, and I think, look, I think the Kiffin thing, again, you nailed it. He was fishing. He was absolutely fishing. He's trolling, and he got the reaction he wanted. However, I'm not surprised at all that Jimbo reacted that way, just because Kiffin specifically named A&M, right? Mm-hmm. And if you read Kiffin's quote, he did not say NIL. He said paid. He said, I'm surprised I don't have to pay luxury tax for how much they paid. So that's implying that there's already been money exchanged.
Yeah, he also said I joked earlier. He did say I joked earlier. So he said it in jest. So it wasn't anything that he directly said, but yeah, I get you.
I know. And I'm not saying I feel that way. I'm just saying that when Jimbo, as a coach of a program, he's just trying to protect his name at that point, because that is still illegal, paying players to commit. So a joke or not, it's in a press conference. Your program is named directly. You have to respond and give your side of the story, whatever you believe.
Be careful with that one. That's another Ross Bjork thing. No, be careful with that.
But that's my whole point, right? Is Jimbo wanted to respond because he had admitted to Feinbaum that NIL has always been a thing, and again, this is something we all knew. I mean, you can go
Trans
back
A&M was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. You go back to the 80s at the Southwest Conference. People have had bagmen, and that stuff has been going on. So when Jimbo said that, as you pointed out, it wasn't really that surprising or that big of a deal at the time. But then, I think what really upset him was to hear Saban say that they've never participated in that, because he addressed Saban directly in his press conference. Then he didn't, I guess, address Lane directly. He called him, I think, a clown.
Yeah, he called him a clown.
Yeah, but
I think he called Saban a clown too, because he said coach is. So Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin clowns. It's a ridiculous thing. Although I will say, I need to get out of here real quick. We're at about 13 minutes. The October 29th game in Kyle Field is the CBS game. It's going to be in a spectacular atmosphere. And that Ole Miss A&M game is just going to be a high-level slugfest. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either. And then that's the thing that to come out of all this, at the end of the day, and like you and I talked about or exchanged on Twitter, it's good for the conference. It's going to create a ton of buzz, a ton of excitement. If Jimbo morphs into this villainous character where he is calling coaches out, which really, I guess he called out Saban prior to the last season, but that was at a booster dinner. That was a very different environment than a press conference that he knew was going to get publicized to the world. So if he wants to morph into that, let it, so be it, but it will make for a lot of interesting storylines and just good games, because people will be very passionate on both sides.
Yeah, if he wants to morph into Steve Spurrier, I'm all about it. But just realize that is exactly the game that Lane wants to play. And if you want somebody that will just troll you mercilessly, let him know he can get a reaction out of you, which he absolutely knew. I'm waiting to see if there's going to be a response. There might not be one for a couple of months, but I think after Destin or something like that, there will absolutely be a response.
Yeah, I think once, like you said, the spring practice, maybe something will come, but my guess is most coaches will just say they want to focus on their team. But yeah, come more towards the season, media days, things like that, there will definitely Lane, I'm sure, will address it at some point. I don't think he will let Jimbo call him a clown without saying something. He may laugh it off and make a joke about it. He probably will, but he'll say something about it.
Yeah, yeah. He dressed up as Tiger King and called himself Portal King
Right.
this week. Well, Hank, man, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that game. I'm looking forward to A&M going to Tuscaloosa. There's just really fun matchups in the West this year that I honestly think I understand not wanting to reply to what's going or wanting to reply to what's going on whenever you feel like your integrity is being questioned. I get that. But man, to have Nick Saban just circle a game on a calendar that he was already circling, now he's just sharpieing over and over again. That's a pretty scary prospect for I guess the Max Johnson led Texas A&M Aggies.
Yeah, let's just say Jimbo clearly is laying it all out on the line. Like we said, he had a little bit of a call out to Saban prior to last season. It was not anything like this, not near the as emphatic, not near the environment at a press conference of all things. So he clearly is not worried about that. We'll see if the team can back that up. But that I guess it comes with the territory, right? If you're in the SEC and you want to play with the big boys, then you got to be willing to dish it out and certainly take it because it's going to be flying, I think, for years to come with those three. I don't see Lane, Nick, Jimbo, Brian Kelly. He might get involved. I mean, there's a lot of big personalities in the West at the moment. So.
Give me a fake Southern accent and like booty dancing with the Pulp Fiction move all day long. Yeah, that's an interesting recruiting trick, and I'm surprised it did not work today.
Yeah, that was funny, but it'll be great. The storylines will be phenomenal.
Yeah, and this is only going to get better whenever you guys ramped it up because I do think Alabama and Auburn's going to go to the East whenever Oklahoma and Texas comes in. But to Ole Miss establishing itself as literally it's becoming a secondary rival for Texas A&M, and this has a chance to get really heated over the next few years, even before Oklahoma and Texas comes on board. You guys are really submitting yourself into a home and to what could be just a future fun landing spot for you guys rivalry wise. And Arkansas is going through the same thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, it's clear that Jimbo did not take kindly to Lane's comments, and I'm sure Lane does not appreciate being called a clown. So that little spark, that heat, is not going to die down anytime soon. So
I can't believe anybody called Saban a clown. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's
one win and all of a sudden Saban's a clown. That's the level of confidence I wish I had.
All I will say on that is I'm glad that the number one class in the country is at least going to be on campus, barring some portal moves for the next few years to hopefully back that up. Because I'm with you. You and I, our teams play Nick Saban in Alabama every year, and it's typically not very fun. So
this year Ole Miss saw them circled. Ole Miss was circled this year. We got to see that up close and personal, and that is one of the most physical football games I've ever seen. And you could just tell that week was a special week of practice.
Yeah, he might have extended Nick Saban's career a couple years just out of pure spite.
Absolutely crazy.
Well, we'll find out.
All right, Hank, man, I appreciate it, and thanks for coming by, man.
Yep, absolutely, Stephen. Thank you.
All right.